Now, Nigeria's military has allowed journalists to see one area where its soldiers have fought Boko Haram as part of a new offensive. The tour happened on Wednesday in Borno State, one of three now under emergency rule. In Marte, a village that borders Cameroon, Chad, and Niger, soldiers said extremists raised their own flag. Officers displayed a cache of weapons they said they seized from Boko Haram fighters, ranging from locally made pistols that fire a single shotgun shell to truck-mounted anti-aircraft guns. Commander said an area with burned-out cars was the site of Boko Haram base. Well, now to the challenge of growing food in a fast-changing African climate. Experts say small farmers need greater attention as environmental solutions often start with them. While almost invisible in global climate change debate, the smallholder farmers are on the front line of the climate impacts. The International Fund for Agriculture Development, IFAD, says more than a third of the world's population is fed by rural farmers. In the developing world, they provide up to 80% of the food. These farmers are creating great pressure on natural resources, but they also are strained under the impact of environmental changes and weather conditions. It does not help that large numbers of farmers live in some of the world's most ecologically and climatically vulnerable areas, such as Africa, where some 90% of agriculture relies on waterfalls for its water needs. With little ability to adapt to new conditions, they remain reliant on weather-dependent natural resources. As climate change bears dire consequences on their lives, the farmers themselves are causing further damage with unsustainable farming practices. For instance, due to overfishing at Benin's Lake Ahim, some 70% of local fisheries are in danger of collapsing. Rose MENSAH is a local fish vendor.
Before, there was a lot of money to be made in fish, but now the fishermen come back with small fish or none at all.
IFAD says recognizing the key role of rural farmers in climate change solutions would both improve their condition as well as help protect the environment. ELWYN Granger Jones is the director of IFAD's Environment and Climate Change Division.
Through their activities, they hold the key to a significant amount of future emissions, which will depend on how they manage that land, whether the carbon is kept in the soil or whether it's released from the soil through unsustainable farming practices and uncontrolled deforestation. So we can't forget these people.
This project on the slopes of Mount Kenya is an example of the benefits of investing in rural farmers and enabling them to become custodians of both the natural resources as well as their carbon emissions. According to IFAD, forest cover in the area had shrunk by over 5,000 hectares due to excessive logging and unsustainable farming practices, which consequently hindered water flow in rivers and caused soil erosion. After local farmers were engaged in a project to plant and protect trees in the area and made responsible for protecting the water sources, both the farmers and the environment benefited. NESTRY NDICHU is the River Basin Management Officer at the Mount Kenya East Pilot Project.
You see, the vegetation cover has improved. The farmers have changed their way of farming, and as well as the pollution in the rivers has lessened. And with the volumes of the water in the rivers have improved.
Seeking to help some 8 million rural people face the effects of the climate change, IFAD launched the Adaptation for Smallholder Agriculture program in October 2012. Initiatives in the project include the Re-Greening the Sahel program against desertification, which has resulted in improved crop yields, greater resistance to droughts, and income for local communities, as well as a project in Kenya in which flexi biogas generators have helped rural families supply power to their homes, saving them money and reducing deforestation. Well, to talk more about small farmers and the critical role they play both in providing us with food and protecting the environment, I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, Nigeria's Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Welcome to Africa 54, Minister.
Yeah, well, good to be here.
Yes. Now, to underscore the importance of agriculture right in Nigeria, recently the President Goodluck Jonathan actually said that in 2012, agriculture contributed to about 35% of the GDP of the country. But many will tell you that Nigeria could have done better in agriculture if the sector hadn't been neglected for many years just because of oil.
Absolutely. You know, we were the biggest player in the world in terms of production of peanuts in the world. We were the largest player in terms of oil palm production in the world in the 60s. We were number 2 in the world in cocoa production in the 60s. And we're the largest producer of cotton in the 60s, yes. We found oil and we abandoned agriculture. We're paying a big price for it. Today we're spending $11 billion importing basic things like wheat, rice, fish and sugar. Absolutely. You know, we are determined to turn around agriculture from decades of neglect to agriculture as a business, not a way of life.
Yes, and you realize that, as we mentioned earlier, there's a close connection between agriculture and the environment, because farmers rely on the environment, but there's a lot of distraction happening if there's no proper guidelines and guidance.
Absolutely. I think in terms of environment, what's most important is to have sustainable productivity growth in agriculture. We are supporting our farmers to have access to fertilizers and use them more efficiently. Second is for them to be also be able to manage water better, because you must get more grain per drop of water. And thirdly is that in an era of climate change, farmers have to be protected.
Yes.
You need to get access to policy instruments that protect them against the negative impact of climate change.
Someone in the Niger Delta area is probably listening to you now and saying, hey, there's a lot of environmental distraction by the oil companies. The government hasn't been seen to do a lot. Instead, in fact, people protest against the activities of the oil companies have been punished.
Well, actually what happened is that we rely so much on oil, and nobody drinks oil and nobody smokes gas. What we have to do is to shift the focus of the economy back to agriculture. I think even in the Niger Delta area, not just in crop production, but also in fisheries, we are actually re-estimating what the farmers there have to do and moving them into more agriculturally based enterprises. There's no doubt in my mind that the future of Nigeria lies in agriculture, not in oil.
Now, if we break it down to simple terms, imagine I'm in Nigeria today. What would I see that is evidence of what you're doing as a Minister of Agriculture?
Well, 3 big things you will see. First is that all the farmers in the country now are getting fertilizers and seeds. They never used to get that. Only 11% of farmers used to get the inputs because the government bought it and the government sold it. We ended that corruption of 40 years in 90 days. So in 1 year, we reached 1.5 million farmers. This year, we will reach 10 million farmers, all by mobile phone across the country.
That's
Secondly, in terms of food production, we said we were going to produce 20 million metric tons of food by 2015. That's 5 million metric tons per year. Last year, we produced 8.1 million metric tons. That's 75% above our target. And we created 2.5 million jobs. That's what you see.
Very briefly, to the north and in fact, even parts of the east, it's very dry. What are you doing there to help the farmers?
Well, first and foremost is that we are actually investing a lot more on irrigation so that we can have a lot more irrigated land. Only 0.1% of our land is actually irrigated. Secondly, is actually managing water. Water is not our problem in Nigeria, though. We just have to manage water a lot better. And we are introducing a lot of drought-tolerant crops, a lot more sorghum, a lot more millet, a lot more cassava. That's the best way to go.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Dr.
Good to you.
Adesina, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Adesina is the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development in Nigeria.